world had watched Kyren Lacy's mom ride for him with the kind of love that turned heads. So when the news hit that Kyren was found dead in what's being investigated as a suicide, the shock rippled far and wide.
But oh man, I'm lost for words too. Death of Kyren Lacy, man, I'm lost for words too, bro.
But if the world was stunned, imagine being his mother. What she did next left everyone speechless. The tragedy unfolds. On the evening of April 12, 2025, former LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy was found dead in Houston, Texas, at the tender age of 24. The news broke on April 13, 2025, when LSU officially confirmed the passing of their standout wide receiver Kyren Lacy. Reports from multiple sources suggest that Lacy's death was a suspected suicide, though authorities have not officially confirmed this cause as investigations continue. What we do know is that this tragedy occurred just one day before Kyren was scheduled to appear before a grand jury on April 14, 2025, facing serious legal charges stemming from a fatal car crash that occurred months earlier. Before we delve into the heartfelt response from Kenny's mother, we must first understand the complex and troubling circumstances that preceded this young man's untimely death. Let us rewind to December 17, 2024, a date that would forever alter the trajectories of multiple lives. On that fateful day, along Highway 20 near Thibodaux, Louisiana, a Dodge Charger was reportedly speeding and swerving erratically, creating dangerous conditions on the two-lane rural highway. The consequences were devastating. A head-on collision that would claim the life of 78-year-old Herman Hall, a Vietnam veteran who had proudly served 2 tours of duty for his country. The impact of this collision was catastrophic. According to police reports and witness statements, the crash was so severe that the front ends of both vehicles were completely crushed from the intense impact. Herman Hall and his wife were both wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash. While Mrs. Hall survived with multiple broken bones, Herman's injuries proved fatal despite emergency services airlifting him to the University Medical Center in New Orleans.
And I was like, okay, well, how's Dad? And she said, well, he's fine. He's complaining that his back hurts. And I was like, okay. She's like, well, I have to go. And so she hangs up, and I was like, so then she calls me back. And she said, hey, they're gonna airlift your dad to UMC. I was like, wait, what? Airmed? What are you talking about? You said he was okay. She's like, oh, well, he will. He'll be fine. So apparently she was in shock.
Were the allegations that followed. According to Louisiana State Police, surveillance footage from a nearby business revealed that after the collision, the driver of the Dodge Charger, later identified as Kyren Lacy, allegedly fled the scene without stopping to render aid or report his involvement in the crash. For weeks following the incident, as Herman Hall's family grieved their sudden loss just days before Christmas, they were not informed of the identity of the driver responsible. It wasn't until January 2025 that Kyren Lacy turned himself into authorities, facing charges of negligent homicide, felony hit and run with death, and reckless operation of a vehicle. He was released on a $151,000 bond, but the legal shadow that now hung over him was substantial. The once promising NFL prospect, who had declared for the 2025 draft just days after the crash, now faced not only the end of his football dreams, but potentially years of incarceration. For those who had followed Kyren Lacy's collegiate career, the news was shocking and dissonant with the image of the talented athlete they had come to admire. During his 5 years of collegiate football, first at the University of Louisiana, Lafayette before transferring to LSU in 2022, Lacy had established himself as a formidable wide receiver with impressive statistics. In his final season with LSU, he led the team with 9 touchdown catches, accumulated 866 yards on 58 receptions across 12 games, and declared for the NFL draft with hopes of continuing his athletic career professionally. However, as news of the charges against him spread, his draft prospects dimmed considerably. Pro Football Focus dropped his ranking to number 269, making him at best a borderline draft pick. The pinnacle of athletic achievement that had seemed within his grasp was now fading from view, replaced by the grim reality of serious legal consequences. As April 14, 2025 approached, the date when a grand jury would hear evidence related to the charges against him, the pressure on Kyren must have been immense. Whatever inner struggles he was experiencing, whatever guilt, fear, or despair may have consumed him in those final days, we may never fully know. What we do know is that on April 12, 2025, Kyren Lacy was found dead in Houston just 2 days before his scheduled grand jury hearing. The news of his death sent shockwaves through the LSU community, the sports world, and most devastatingly, his family. As media outlets began reporting on this tragic development, statements emerged from various sources. His attorney, Matthew Ory, issued a statement to ESPN confirming the death and requesting privacy. It is with profound sorrow that we confirm the tragic passing of Kyren Lacy. First and foremost, we ask that the public and the media give his family the space and time they need to grieve this unimaginable loss in peace. LSU also issued a statement expressing sadness and offering condolences, while friends like Rontrell Sandolph and NFL player Amik Robertson shared heartfelt tributes on social media. But amidst these public expressions of grief, the reaction from Kyren's immediate family, particularly his parents, remained largely private. For the family of Herman Hall, the Vietnam veteran whose life was cut short in that December crash, the pain of loss has been compounded by the complicated aftermath. Herman Hall was more than just a victim in a tragic accident. He was a dedicated family man whose life was filled with service and love. His daughter, Heather Dickerson, shared glimpses of the man her father was.
He loved to garden. He loved to ride his bike. He used to ride his bike like 28 miles a day. I don't know, he just told great stories. He loved his family, he loved his friends.
Their attorney, Digger Earls, described Hall as a great man with a loving family who left behind a wife who unfortunately has debilitating injuries from this accident as well.
Was a great man with a loving family. He leaves behind a wife who unfortunately has debilitating injuries from this accident as well. She was in the car with him.
Now, with Kyren Lacy's death, the Hall family faces a complex emotional landscape, a death that may feel like both a denial of justice and a tragedy in its own right, particularly for a family that had already experienced profound loss. A father's message. On the day after his son's death was reported, Kenny Lacy, the father of Kyren Lacy, took to Facebook to share his thoughts with the world. Unlike many public statements that carefully avoid the raw edges of pain, Kenny's words were unflinchingly honest, deeply personal, and carried an urgency that could only come from someone who had just experienced the ultimate parental nightmare. Young parents, start talking to your kids at a very early age and make sure they are confident and comfortable confiding in you, Kenny wrote in his powerful post. Don't be cool with "I'm all right" or "I'm good" when you know deep down something isn't right. Mental health is real, and for the most part it's invisible. Don't ignore the signs, even if they may seem small. These words, shared in the immediate aftermath of discovering his son had died, reportedly by suicide, carry a weight that is almost unbearable to contemplate. They are not just a father's grief-stricken response, they are a desperate attempt to extract meaning from tragedy, to prevent other families from experiencing the same devastation. Kenny's message continued with a raw acknowledgement of the permanence of his loss. Our lives have been changed forever, and this will never be okay, but God needed my baby more than he was needed here. What makes Kenny Lacy's message particularly significant is the context in which it was shared. His son Kyren faced serious legal charges and potentially years of incarceration. The circumstances surrounding his death came just before he was scheduled to face a grand jury hearing. Yet rather than focusing on these aspects, rather than expressing anger at a system that might have contributed to his son's mental state, Kenny chose to center his message on mental health awareness and parental vigilance. However, amidst these various expressions of grief and remembrance, there was a notable absence of public statements from Kyren's mother. While Kenny Lacy chose to share his thoughts publicly, research indicates that Kyren's mother has kept her reactions private, perhaps finding solace in the shelter of personal space rather than public expression. This difference in response between Kyren's parents illustrates an important truth about grief. There is no single right way to process profound loss. Some find comfort in public sharing, in transforming their pain into a message that might help others. Others need the sanctuary of privacy, dealing with their emotions away from the public eye. Both approaches are equally valid, equally deserving of respect. The scrutiny that accompanies high-profile tragedies can place an immense burden on families already struggling with unimaginable loss. For the Lacy family, this scrutiny has been particularly complex given the circumstances surrounding Kyren's death and the pending legal case related to Herman Hall's death. Their attorney had requested privacy in the immediate aftermath of Kyren's passing, acknowledging the profound sorrow of the situation and asking that the public and the media give his family the space and time they need to grieve this unimaginable loss in peace. This request underscores the delicate balance between public interest and personal privacy that families must navigate when tragedy thrusts them into the spotlight. Kenny Lacy's decision to speak out despite this request for privacy speaks to his determination to find purpose in pain. His focus on mental health awareness comes at a time when the topic is receiving increased attention nationally, yet still remains shrouded in stigma and misunderstanding. By sharing his son's story through this lens, Kenny has contributed to an essential conversation about the invisible struggles that many face in silence. For the Hall family, the death of their patriarch, described by his attorney as a retired soldier, retired law enforcement, just a wonderful man that left a lifelong legacy behind, came suddenly and violently, the result of another's alleged recklessness. Their grief has been compounded by the lengthy investigative process, the initial withholding of the driver's identity due to his status as a high-profile individual, and now the death of the person allegedly responsible before the case could proceed to trial. The tragedy of Kyren Lacy's story may be that by the time the full weight of his circumstances became apparent, those communication channels were not strong enough to allow him to express his despair or seek the help he needed. This is the heartbreaking reality that Kenny seems determined to help other families avoid, the silent suffering that can lead to irreversible decisions. The unfinished case. The grand jury hearing scheduled for April 14, 2025, just 2 days after his body was discovered in Houston, will never take place. The evidence that investigators had gathered over months, the witness testimonies, the surveillance footage that allegedly showed Lacy fleeing the scene of the fatal crash, all of these elements have now been rendered moot in the eyes of the law, though their implications continue to reverberate through the lives of all involved. Had Kyren Lacy lived to face the legal consequences of the December 2024 crash that claimed the life of 78-year-old Herman Hall, what might have unfolded? Based on similar cases involving athletes charged with comparable offenses, we can examine what his future might have held, both legally and professionally. Kyren Lacy faced serious charges stemming from the December 17, 2024 incident: negligent homicide, felony hit and run with death, and reckless operation of a vehicle. Under Texas law, hit and run causing death is classified as a third-degree felony, punishable by 2 to 10 years in prison. The negligent homicide charge would have carried additional penalties, potentially extending his incarceration period significantly. Given the severity of the charges and the fatality involved, legal experts suggest that Lacy would have likely faced substantial prison time if convicted. His status as a public figure and athlete might have complicated the proceedings, as evidenced by the initial reluctance of authorities to release his name, which Hall's family attorney criticized, stating,
I don't understand why state police would withhold the information, like the name of the defendant, because he plays football. That's ridiculous to me.
The evidence against Lacy appeared substantial. Surveillance footage from a nearby business reportedly captured his Dodge Charger involved in the crash before he allegedly fled south on LA Highway 20 without stopping to render aid or report his involvement. The impact of the collision was severe enough to cause fatal injuries to Herman Hall and serious injuries to Hall's wife, who was driving their vehicle at the time. To understand what might have happened to Lacy had he lived to face these charges, we can look to similar cases involving professional athletes charged with hit-and-run offenses, particularly those involving fatalities or serious injuries. One comparable case is that of Matt Bush, a baseball pitcher who was involved in a hit-and-run incident in March 2012. While driving under the influence, Bush struck a 72-year-old motorcyclist, causing severe injuries, including brain hemorrhaging and fractured bones. Like Lacy is alleged to have done, Bush fled the scene. He was subsequently charged with DUI with serious bodily injury, leaving the scene of an accident with injury, and other counts. Bush received a sentence of 51 months in prison, serving approximately 3.5 years before his release in October 2015. After his release, Bush was able to resume his MLB career, signing with the Texas Rangers in 2016 and even pitching in the playoffs. His case demonstrates that for some athletes, a hit-and-run conviction with serious injury can lead to a significant career interruption, but not necessarily a permanent end. However, there's a crucial distinction between Bush's case and Lacy's. Bush's victim survived, albeit with serious injuries, while Lacy's case involved a fatality. This difference would likely have resulted in more severe penalties for Lacy had he been convicted. Another case offering insight is that of Jung-Ho Kang, a third baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates who was involved in a DUI-related hit-and-run in South Korea in 2016. While no one was seriously injured in Kang's case, the incident, combined with prior off-field issues, led to him missing the entire 2017 MLB season. His performance declined upon his return in 2018, and he eventually returned to the Korean Baseball Organization in 2019. Kang's case illustrates how even a hit-and-run without fatality can derail a professional athlete's career, particularly when compounded by other issues. For Lacy, whose alleged offense was more severe, the career implications would have likely been even more profound. For a more extreme comparison, we can look to the case of Aaron Hernandez, the former New England Patriots tight end who was convicted of first-degree murder in 2015. While Hernandez's case involved intentional murder rather than negligent homicide, it demonstrates how the most serious criminal convictions typically result in permanent career determination for athletes. Hernandez was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and the Patriots released him immediately following his arrest. Had Kyren Lacy lived to face trial and been convicted, the evidence suggests his NFL aspirations would have been paused for several years at minimum. Given that he had already declared for the 2025 NFL Draft in December 2024, just days after the fatal crash, the timing could not have been worse from a career perspective. His draft prospects had already dimmed considerably following news of the charges, with Pro Football Focus dropping his ranking to number 269, making him at best a borderline draft pick. A conviction would have likely meant serving a prison sentence of at least 10 years based on Texas law for hit and run causing death. During this time, his professional development would have been severely hindered, and his physical conditioning would have been difficult to maintain at the elite level required for NFL competition. Upon release, Lacy would have faced additional hurdles in attempting to resume his football career. The NFL's policies on players with criminal convictions, particularly those involving fatalities, would have complicated his return. Teams might have hesitated to sign him due to public relations concerns, and league sanctions could have further limited his eligibility. However, Lacy's age at the time of the incident, just 24 years old, might have worked in his favor for an eventual comeback attempt. Young athletes with exceptional talent have occasionally managed to resume their careers after serving sentences for serious offenses, as Matt Bush's case demonstrates. The path would have been extremely difficult, but not entirely impossible. The evidence suggests that had Lacy been convicted, his career recovery would have been possible but uncertain, with significant obstacles to overcome. A year-long absence from competitive football during what should have been the prime of his athletic development would have been difficult to overcome. The stigma associated with a fatal hit and run would have followed him throughout any attempted comeback. For the family of Herman Hall, Lacy's death means that the legal process they had been counting on for accountability will never reach its conclusion. Heather Dickerson, Hall's daughter, had expressed her determination to see justice served, saying,
I'm confident there will be justice, but no, I won't stop.
The Hall family's attorney, Digger Earls, had emphasized that no one is above the law, not a star athlete, not anyone, expressing concern about how the case had been handled due to Lacy's status.
No one is above the law, not a star athlete, not anyone.
He described himself as a big LSU fan who had cheered Kyren Lacy throughout his career, but maintained that this would not affect his determination to seek justice for the Hall family. Now, with Lacy's death, the legal avenues for accountability have closed, leaving both families to find other ways to process their losses and move forward. In a tragic irony, Lacy's death occurred just as the legal consequences for his alleged actions were about to be determined. Whatever internal struggles led to what investigators suspect was a suicide will never be fully known, but it's impossible not to consider the timing, one day before his scheduled grand jury hearing, as potentially significant. The pressure of facing serious charges, the prospect of years in prison, the likely end of his NFL dreams, and perhaps most significantly, the knowledge that his actions may have caused the death of another person, these factors could create an overwhelming burden for anyone, particularly a young person with so much at stake. Kenny Lacy's powerful message about mental health awareness takes on additional layers of meaning in this context. Mental health is real, and for the most part, it's invisible. Don't ignore the signs, even if they may seem small, he wrote in his Facebook post. These words suggest that Kyren may have been struggling silently with the weight of what had happened and what was to come, his distress, perhaps going unnoticed or unaddressed until it was too late. The unresolved nature of Kyren Lacy's legal case creates a complex emotional landscape for all involved. For the Hall family, there may be a sense of justice denied, of accountability that will never come through legal channels. For the Lacy family, there is the double burden of grieving their son's death while also grappling with his alleged role in another's tragedy. Comparing Lacy's situation to that of other athletes who have faced similar charges, we can see the range of possible outcomes that might have awaited him had he lived. The cases of Matt Bush and Jung Ho Kang suggest that a return to professional sports after a hit-and-run conviction is possible, but fraught with challenges. The case of Aaron Hernandez demonstrates how the most serious convictions typically end careers permanently. What sets Lacy's case apart is not just its unresolved nature, but the complex intersection of mental health, legal consequences, and the ripple effects of momentary recklessness. Unlike Bush, Kang, or Hernandez, Lacy will never face legal judgment for his alleged actions. Instead, his story has become a tragic, cautionary tale about the devastating consequences that can flow from a single moment of poor decision-making, both for those directly harmed and for the person responsible. For athletes and young people watching this story unfold, there are profound lessons about accountability, mental health, and the fragility of promising futures. Perhaps the most important takeaway is the one Kenny Lacy emphasized in his poignant message: the critical importance of recognizing mental health struggles before they lead to irreversible harm. While we can speculate about what might have happened based on similar cases, the reality is that some questions will remain forever unanswered. What remains clear is the need for greater awareness of mental health struggles, especially for those facing serious legal consequences, and the importance of creating supportive environments where such struggles can be acknowledged and addressed before they lead to further tragedy. May both Herman Hall and Kyren Lacy rest in peace. May their families find the strength, support, and eventually the healing they need. And may we all learn from their stories, becoming more attuned to the invisible struggles of those around us, more willing to reach out when we ourselves are struggling, and more committed to creating communities where mental health is prioritized, vulnerability is welcomed, and help is readily available to all who need it. If you enjoyed this video, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.